Hello, everyone. I'm Nick Cedergren from Special Olympics Minnesota, and I'm here today to talk with you about Unified Physical Education 101. Special Olympics Minnesota, we've been around for for around 50 years. And the first thing that we say about Special Olympics is that the first 50 years of Special Olympics was all about access for individuals with disabilities. The next 50 years is all about inclusion. So that's why we're here today. We're here to promote a class called Unified Physical Education. In Minnesota specifically, this class has grown a ton, and we're excited to share with you not only what's been happening in Unified Physical Education, but where it's also going. A couple of session objectives for today is we want you to learn about the inclusion revolution that's happening in your district, in Minnesota, and in the nation. We want you to understand the basic components of Unified Physical Education. We also want you to hear about different strategies about schools that are currently implementing Unified Physical Education and how that works for them, and if you can steal any tidbits and best practices. Today, if you want to use the hashtag Unified PE, that's kind of the Unified PE on the Unified PE Twitter handle. When you go on Twitter and look it up, you'll see a lot of best practices. You'll see a lot of conversation that has been flowing throughout the past couple of years. So in Minnesota, we have this program called Unified Champion Schools, which Unified PE fits under. Unified Champion Schools is a nationwide program in over 10,000 schools. And in order to become a Unified Champion School for inclusion, your school has to have three components in it. One is inclusive youth leadership, one is unified sports, and the other one is whole school engagement. Unified Physical Education fits under the Unified Sports category. So if you're interested in having a Unified PE class in your school, just know you're a third of the way there to become a Unified Champion School. And now we do recognize that Unified Physical Education is not a sport. That's just our terminology where it lands under. If you're interested in learning more about Unified Champion Schools, about Unified PE, or Unified in general, please reach out to Special Olympics at schools@specialolympicsminnesota.org, schools@specialolympicsminnesota.org. Studies show that if you want to use this Unified Champion School route, studies show that if you have all three of these components within your school is most likely to change your school culture towards inclusion. And that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of what we want to promote as an organization. And we're aligning ourselves to best meet schools where they're at and to meet each individual school and their unique culture, their unique setting, and how we can promote inclusive school practices. Now we move into the why. Why is inclusion needed? Why is Unified needed? Why are we promoting inclusive schools? And so here are a few stats from studies out there. This one comes from PACER's National Bullying Prevention Center, where students with disabilities are 2 to 3 times more likely to be bullied than students without. It's often the case where students with disabilities are often told not to report a bullying or teasing incident within their schools. There's studies out there that show that. So the average rate right now is that 1 out of 5 students within a school report bullying. So if you take that, multiply it by 2 or 3 times, that's a significant amount of students that are reporting being bullied within their school setting. Another study that just came out from Europe indicated that individuals with disabilities die 16 years premature compared to the general population. And the conclusion of that study stated that it's not their disability, it's kind of the systems around it of the reasons why. Whether that is healthcare, whether that is schools, whether that is quality of life. Those are the types of systems that are aiding in this number. Another related to health, another related study that has shown is students with disabilities are 4.5 times less physically active than students without disabilities. And then the last statistic to showcase today is that 56% of students in special education spend less than 10 minutes a day interacting with a student without a disability. And so if these two student groups aren't even interacting with one another, we have to figure out ways and frameworks where that can happen. And for us, this session is going to be the Unified Physical Education Framework. Special Olympics Minnesota, we partner with over 200 schools throughout the state, all at varying levels, pre-K through 12th grade and even colleges. And it's really fun to go into a school and talk to them about where they're at with inclusion. And often when we go into schools to see where they're at, we like to observe what their lunchroom looks like. And so we think you can tell a lot by school culture by what their lunchroom looks like. And so on this next slide, you might have seen these before. We want you to picture what your lunchroom looks like or looked like last year, at the end of last year, in these three different graphics, where the students with disabilities are represented by the colored dots and students without disabilities are represented by the green dots. Is it an exclusive environment with students with disabilities aren't even allowed to eat lunch? That's not the case anymore, but it was not so long ago. 50, 60 years ago, that was the case where students with disabilities weren't allowed into the school because there was no services for them. Is it segregated, where maybe students with disabilities might be eating lunch in your school, but they're in their own classroom, or they have their own space? Or is it integrated, where students with disabilities are eating with the general population in the general lunchroom, but they might have their own table. They might have their own table reserved for them, where from a bird's eye view, it might look like inclusion, but at the end of the day, it's not. So often we find schools at that segregated or integrated phase. And when we use these terms, it's often related back to the civil rights movement. And we think we're currently in the civil rights movement for individuals with disabilities presently. And so we think by aiding in inclusive environments in your school, such as this graphic, by aiding in school lunchrooms that are inclusive, it spills into the hallways, which spills into the classrooms, which ultimately spills into your school community and starts that shift into changing mindsets towards inclusion. And so that's our goal. This is the why we're doing what we're doing, is we want to see that shift to a more inclusive place. Your school might already be at this, at the inclusion graphic, which is so great. We want to keep growing off of that, and we want to help students make that change within their school. So now I'm going to transition into what is unified physical education. But before I do that, I want to note that feel free to type in anything in the chat throughout this time. I will be on it live. I'll be answering and sharing resources as we move forward. So please ask any questions, share your thoughts, be more than happy to connect further. So specifically, this framework of unified physical education, what is it? It's an opportunity where you can provide educational and physical activities for students of all abilities. This instruction is intentional for all students with that universal design learning mindset. Unified physical education is a physical education standards-based course. And so we want to make that very clear from the get-go, that this is a standards-based model. This is not we'll get into it later, but we want that to be the minimum standard, where you're using physical education standard from the nationwide guidance, from your state guidance for this course. Some potential outcomes of the course are listed right here. I'm not going to read through all of them, but as you can notice that they are directly aligned with the Shape America's national standards 1 through 5, which is really important to us, that we're starting with a solid foundation, that we're leaning on the experts, that we're leaning on the most up-to-date knowledgeable organizations that are leading the way for physical education and health in our nation. And so we want that, again, to come across very clear, that we want you to work with your state standards and grade level outcomes, but again, the foundation is national standards based. And we'll touch on Shape America in a little bit as well. So Unified PE is a course. It's a course, it's a 1-to-1 ratio model where you have ideally half the students with an intellectual disability and half of them without. We'll talk about best practices later, but how you can structure the course is it could be a new elective course within your school. Often we have those required courses, but it's easier to get elective courses into your course catalog. So you could apply to get a brand new course called Unified Physical Education into your course catalog. There's best practices around what that looks like, who to connect with. What is that terminology? What is that code that you use in your course catalog? And so we want you to lean on Special Olympics for that support, and then we'll connect you with other schools and other educators that have already gone through this process to showcase how to successfully get into your course catalog. Another way that you could structure your course is by transforming another course that you currently have that might be getting low numbers or might have that potential to be a unified model. You might already have an inclusive PE course. There is a difference between inclusive PE and unified PE. Often we use the term that breathing the same air is not enough. And so in an inclusive PE setting, everyone might be in the gym and you might be doing the same lesson, but at the end of the day, it's not unified. Unified is meeting students, every single student where they're at, where you're designing the lessons around every single student rather than designing it around the majority and then fitting in people who don't fit into it. And so you could transform another course into a unified PE course. We've also seen some schools, they've put it in their course catalog as an option for their 9th grade required course, which is really exciting to see. That's what this the potential of this course can have, is you're fulfilling those standards to graduate, you're fulfilling those requirements to graduate through a unified PE structure. What unified PE is not, it is not replacing DAPE. This is often one of the biggest questions that we get from educators when we first talk about unified physical education. We really want to make that apparent, that you still want to abide by your students' IEP goals as established by that group who does that for that individual student. We want to look at the laws that govern special education, and one of the laws dictates what is the least restrictive environment for that student to learn at its optimal best. And sometimes that's DAPE, sometimes that's general education PE course, sometimes that's unified PE. And so we want that to be an option, another option for students to fulfill what their IEP goals are. Again, this is a physical standards-based class for all students with and without disabilities, but often we've seen that students still get their DAPE services, but also take unified PE in the class for the social aspect of unified PE, because you are interacting on a very regular basis. And so there's many ways to figure out what the best fit for the student. We just wanted to come across that this is not replacing DAPE. This is another option to serve students. This is also not a feel-good course. We want that to come across too. This is not mentor-mentee mentality. This is a partnership mentality. We often say this is not for students with disabilities. This is with them. This is all students are coming together to accomplish these goals and to learn these physical education standards and benchmarks. This is also not a photo opportunity that, oh, we're gonna buddy up, we're gonna take a good photo and then leave, and then the class transforms to a different model. We want this to be sustainable long-term, where we're working together towards a common goal, not that helper-helpy mentality. This is also not a TA or study hall course. We want that to come across very clearly as well. That all students are receiving a physical education credit for the class. We've often seen schools start with this because it is such a new concept for schools, that students without disabilities might get a study hall or leadership credit, but at the end of the day, we need to move towards a physical education requirement credit for this class. And so you can work with Special Olympics and your contact at Special Olympics Minnesota if you want to help into how to figure out how to structure this and how to best put your foot forward as you apply for a new course. One great resource that I'm going to highlight right away is our Unified Physical Education Resource Guide. It's in its 2nd edition, which was recently released. As you can see on the right side of the table of contents, there are a ton of resources in here. And the point of this resource guide is to help you get started, to help you craft in your mind what unified physical education could look like in your school. So there's a ton of information going from what is unified PE to even spoon feeding you a sample course syllabus and a unit schedule. It gives a course description so you can copy and paste that as you apply for a new course. It also gives great tips for inclusion on what that can look like, whether using person-first language or adapting equipment. We really want students to leave this inclusive mindset, and so it's really great student-friendly ideas. We also, in this resource guide, it also provides you with 4 different unit plans. These unit plans are extensive, which we'll go over in a little bit. But there's 4 really great unit plans, and there's future opportunities to add more. There's also wellness topics. There's also journaling and reflection ideas, which we'll share in a little bit. How to assess is in there, and then ideas for educators for future opportunities on how to move the unified movement in your school to even greater heights. One plug-in is that for the wellness topics, we have another session called Unified Wellness Introduction, which is all about a similar structured class, but instead of physical education standards, we implement health and wellness standards into there. So if you're interested in that, you can watch it next, or you can check it out later. It's called Unified Wellness, and we'd be happy to spread that movement in your school as well. This resource I'll also touch on where you can find it in a little bit. Here are a couple. Here's a couple pillars of what lessons and what ideas, what topics are within that guide. Not just those four, but also we use the Shape America operational definitions of how activities fit into different categories, and that's listed under the physical education topics. Hopefully your school is already using these or you're familiar with them. This comes from Shape America. There's also a ton of leadership topics in there that you can instill throughout the course of how to incorporate students to be not only advocates, but also leaders in the movement. And then also there's wellness topics at the end of the guide that plug in various wellness lessons and ideas. Right now, I'm going to dive into one of the physical education topics and one of the unit plans. And we're going to talk about basketball. Basketball is a great low-cost activity that you can incorporate into your unified physical education class. It's a great way, based on how basketball is played, to showcase what true unified is all about. Special Olympics, we have competitions for unified basketball, but no, just because we're partnering you with this class does not mean you need to come to a competition, does not mean you need to come to an event. We are all about the skills and standards and benchmarks. That's what we want to promote. So you'll see multiple sport units within this curriculum guide, or excuse me, this resource guide. But at the end of the day, you do not need to come to an event. That's often a question we get as well. So to walk you through what this basketball unit is all about, every unit is structured the same. You'll get objectives, you'll get considerations, equipment, safety. How do we flush that all out before we dive into the actual sessions? There's also objectives of what related to the different standards, which is really, really beneficial as you try to advocate for this course, is that they're already aligned for you. There's also different ways that basketball can be played. Not everyone can play the traditional 5-on-5 basketball game. And so there's some ideas in here, very similar to other sports and other activities, of how can you modify it, but still have the core competencies of basketball. And then as we transition into the different sessions, you'll see that those higher level objectives are broken down even smaller. Not only it provides you an equipment list or materials list, but also gives you vocabulary. And I know that's been a big push in recent years to make sure that we all are speaking the same language when it comes to not only sports-specific skills, but physical activity skills as well. It even breaks it down further into a task and what dribbling is all about, how to ready yourself. What does that sequence look like? How can you, as a teacher or unified partner or athlete, how can you support one another by using these verbal cues? Those are really important as well. Each session builds up on itself. So it starts with skill-based, and then it goes up to the team or game activity-specific content. So you'll see that we start with dribbling, you start with ball handling, and then you grow from there. At the end of every unit in this resource guide, you'll also see, how do you assess? What does that look like, the different attempts, and some instructions for the facilitator on how to set it up. What does it look like? How do you assess across the board in a universal design learning model? And so that's just one unit and one or two sessions of that unit. And so again, in each topic, in the 4 different topics, there's 8 plus sessions, where it has all this information where you can hopefully take it, adjust it to your school, adjust it to your students for what works best for you all. A couple of future considerations with the resources that we're looking at is we want to create more skills-based lesson plans, standards-based lesson plans for you. So that's something we'll be working on this year. We also want to align it to the Minnesota K-12 standards. This version 2 just came out recently, and again, it's written for Special Olympics North America and to hit all 50 states. But we want to tie it back to Minnesota to help support you all and what you're achieving. And we also want to develop more support resources to help you market the class, to help you talk about the class further, to help you gain momentum before you even have the class going. In addition to what can your class be doing on top of being in the gym or being outside or being in the weight room. So again, that's the hashtag Unified PE if you want to tweet about this course or find out more information. So that's a very high level of what the course is all about. It's a really great course, specifically in Minnesota. We have over 125 schools that are implementing it, K through 12, and mainly it's at the middle school and high school level. We do have a few elementary schools that are exploring what it looks like, and I believe that there is another session later on in this, the MidDAPE 2020 conference on what does inclusion, what does unified look like in the elementary PE setting. So now that you kind of know a little bit about the course, we want to talk about how do you get it into your course catalog. Often this is a struggle, especially for educators in special education, because it's not often done. It's never really done, especially if you're servicing multiple schools. You might have never been taught or know how to add a class into your school course catalog. So we're going to start. We got to start somewhere. You got to gain support from others. You got to figure out who's teaching it, and you have to figure out your policies and procedures. And then once you figure out all of those, it kind of funnels down into paperwork. And I know that we all, especially in the special education field, paperwork is a big thing. But if you're interested in this course, often there is a paperwork, there is a process to get started. It is a process. It can be lengthy, and so we really want you to start sooner rather than later if you're interested in this course. We want you to gather resources, look at that guide, look at what we have online, make sure you're best prepared, so when you do look at adding the course that you can speak to it in a great way. You have to research what your district or what your school has for adding a new course to its course catalog. Often, these policies state that you have to do it in the fall for the next school year. So a very high level timeline that we've seen in a majority of schools is that in October, November, December, that's where you have to apply for a new class. And then December, January, February, you go through a process with your school or district where you have to speak to perhaps your director of school curriculum, your school board, about what this class is all about and why it's important. And so you have to apply early. Then the months of November, December, January is when the school decides, should we add it or not? And then in the typical months of January, February, March is when they roll out the new course catalog to get started. And so figure out what your policies are, figure out what that procedure is to add a new class in your school. And you can simply reach out to your administration. You can look online under the teacher's portal, whatever works best for you. Then you have to fill out the necessary paperwork, have those crucial conversations, and advocate for the course. I can't stress this enough that you need to advocate your best throughout the process. And then ideally, the course gets approved. Going back to advocacy, it's really important to get quotes, to get visions, to get stories from yourself, from your department, from students, from parents about why they want this course and what it'll do for them. There's so much more that comes about with the Unified Physical Education course than just what's on paper. And so it's really great to showcase that throughout every single step. After the course gets approved, your timeline does not stop. Often if you're in the special education field, you don't have to create a course syllabus because you typically utilize what their IEPs dictate and their plans down to a T of what they get in their DAPE services. So you might have to create a course syllabus. We have that. We have a general framework structure for you in that guide. So please utilize that. You have to put together a schedule. Grading and assessments is often the one that is often a tricky spot. And so you want to figure out, how do you grade everyone? Not based upon, do they show up? Are they wearing the right thing? Do they have a good attitude? No, this is a standards-based course. And so that's what they should be assessed on. And so we want to keep reiterating that. In addition, once you have the course approved, how are you going to get students aware of this course? Specifically, if you're a DAPE teacher that might not be connected as much to the general population, how do you get them involved? Whether it's talking to guidance counselors, identifying individual students, having one-on-one conversations with them, siblings of students with disabilities, we'll provide you with flyers, with posters, with all of that to help get the word out about this class. What we've seen in a majority of our schools that implement Unified PE is that after the first year, year and a half, the course starts filling itself, which is really exciting to see. And then also you want to develop, what are some other future opportunities outside of the gym that you can get involved with, or outside of the school to get involved in, whether that's attending a Special Olympics event, whether that's hosting a Spread the Word to End the R Word campaign, your class to do that. There's many other ripple effects that you can do to help support the movement within your school. Unified PE has been around for about 5 years. We started out with 2 schools in Minnesota, which has been really great, in Wayzata and in Proctor. And so we really got a smaller school and a larger school to base upon. Then we grew to over 125 schools as of this present year. And so we're really excited to share best practices from around the state. One of the best ways to start out the class is through a class orientation. What is a disability? What is the expectations of the class? What am I getting myself into? That's what the students are going to be asking themselves. This might be the first time that a student without a disability interacted with a student with a disability, or vice versa. And so that's really important to lay that foundation for the class at the very beginning. But don't worry, we provide in that resource guide what that could look like. Often educators split the group up and partners in one room and athletes in another room, or students with disabilities in one room, students without disabilities in another room. And then for the first day, and you talk about those roles and expectations. Then you slowly do some team building activities the upcoming days until you start your class schedule related to those physical education standards. Often language in classes is really important. At Special Olympics, we call individuals with disabilities athletes, but in Unified Physical Education, you don't really have athletes, and so we call them teammates. Very similar with students without disabilities. We call them unified partners. You might just want to call them partners. So establishing what those two groups are called can be beneficial. We also don't want to make sure that a label is that kid's only label or that student's only label moving forward as well. So just be cognizant of the labels and what that could do with either including your class or excluding one another. There's a ton of leadership opportunities within the course, whether students lead a warm-up or a cool-down together, whether they lead or showcase various virtual opportunities online by them doing their own and teaching the class. There's a ton of different opportunities where students can lead themselves and can lead what the movement looks like in your gym space. There's also an opportunity to expand to other things, like I mentioned before, spread the word to end the word, other leadership lessons which are in the resource guide as well. We also want you to tell your story of what Unified PE has done for you and your school culture. We can only grow and we can only help newer schools if we communicate and you let us know where you're at. We love reading journal entries. We love figuring out small to large problems of how to get Unified PE going and thriving within your school. Some other best practices that have emerged is the role of paraprofessionals or paraeducators or educational assistants, support assistants, and how we utilize them within the classroom in more meaningful ways. Another thing that has emerged is co-teaching. A majority of our schools who have Unified Physical Education in their school co-teach. And so it's really exciting to see a PE educator and a DAPE educator come together, and not only allows for a larger class size, but you also get those two minds working together where inclusion doesn't only happen at the student level, but also the educator level. So it brings together departments and in really fun and unique ways. I mentioned before grading and assessments. While there is no turnkey grading or assessment best practice, we do have some ideas within that resource guide of how to promote this within your school or within your class. And so always be referring back to standards-based benchmarks. That's how we want to start grading and assessing within this course from the get-go. One of my favorite parts about the course is the journaling aspect of it. Journaling is really big because you can see where a student was day one all the way through the end of the course of where the student's at. You'll often see that students might choose a different career path because of this course. They might take different leadership roles within their school. They might be doing things with their teammates outside of this class because of Unified Physical Education, because of the friendships that were created. There's many ways to do journaling within a class, whether that's Schoology or Google Classroom, a simple Google form, whatever your school currently does, you can lean on, and we can, again, at Special Olympics, can provide some best practices. But one thing we want to challenge you to do is instead of journaling just for students without disabilities, journaling should be a part of the class for everyone. And so you can expand on how to journal. Is journaling through written words? Is it through a conversation where you can audio record someone and how they answer the class? Is it through photos? Is it through storytelling? There's many different ways to capture and where students are at in the reflection and debriefing portion of this course. And so it's really important to pick out really intentional questions related to what the students just learned, in addition to broader questions of where they're at in their inclusion journey. I mentioned before that this class is based upon Shape America's benchmarks within their school, or within the nationwide standards. And so Shape America is a really big proponent. If you don't know who Shape America is, the Society of Health and Physical Education, they are a big advocacy for unified PE. So much so that they have their own website dedicated to unified physical education. And so it's really exciting that we have this nationwide partnership, and Minnesota is often viewed as one of the leading states in this partnership of how it looks within each individual school. So you'll see on there a lot of Minnesota-based content articles of what unified physical education is all about. And there's some great resources that you can use as well to use as you start the class up in your school. I'll also be sharing this link throughout this time as well, where you can find the Unified Physical Education Resource Guide. You can find the different articles and more on there. Shape America and MinShape and MinDape in particular in Minnesota have been really great and to work with to promote these inclusive school practices. On the Special Olympics side, a couple other opportunities that I just wanted to quickly highlight as you open up in your school year this year in such a unique setting, whether it's related to unified physical education or not. You can utilize these two programs. One's called School of Strength. Special Olympics partner with the WWE to promote workouts. And so you'll see on this that we partnered with a few big-time WWE stars for videos and content related to that. So I'll be sharing that link as well. But if you just want to Google School of Strength, free resources, please utilize that. In addition, we have Fit 5, which is a program focused on being fit and really easy, simple, turnkey resources that you can use within your school or within your class. I'll also be sharing this link as well. One of the benefits of School of Strength and Fit 5 is there are video contents free of charge online. And it's also really great because they're either delivered, the videos are delivered in a unified manner, where you will see individuals with disabilities doing the workout. And for students with disabilities to see that, or students without disabilities to see that, it's really important. It's really important to see yourself going through those different motions on the screen. And so there's a ton of great resources. I'll share those as well, but just wanted to put a quick plug in there for that. I want to go back to these graphics that we mentioned earlier on how important it is to strive for that unified model, or excuse me, that inclusive model, where students are eating together in the lunchroom. You might not know who has a disability or not. But I want to reframe of how we look at these graphics rather than from a comparative model, but maybe to a timeline model. And where's your school at, or where's your school not at, and where can we move to? I think that arrow provides a lot of hope for us, that there is hope to move from graphic to graphic. And we as Special Olympics staff, as our resources, we want to be there with you to help move your school towards a more inclusive model. We actually think the unified model brings it one step further, where we're recognizing everyone's abilities, whether you have a disability or not, in your school culture. And so every student, every educator is so unique, and we want to honor that. We want to celebrate that. But we also want to work together towards a common goal, whether that's going through a basketball dribbling session, whether that's competing in unified basketball, whether that's hosting a Spread the Word to End the Word campaign, whether that's getting through unified PE altogether. That's the beauty of unified, is we're recognizing and we're acknowledging and we're meeting students where they're at, regardless of ability level, regardless of disability, and we're moving together towards a common goal. So next steps, if you're interested in unified physical education, reflect on this. Reflect on, is this a good fit for your school? Is this a good fit for your students? Does this work for you? If you want to take it further, I would recommend talking to your department. Start small. Don't send them all of these resources. Say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of other schools, districts doing this? Just start those conversations. This is a great couple weeks to do that. Because you're in training, because you are just starting schools up. This is a really unique year. This is a really unique year because you as DAPE teachers, as PE teachers are gonna be stretched in so many different ways, and there's gonna be so much more criteria around you. This might be the perfect year to add a new course as you open up for the 2021-2022 school year. And so start thinking about that. What can you do today to make tomorrow or next school year even better? Talk to Special Olympics Minnesota. We would love to partner with you, even from sharing the idea, yep, I'm interested, to, hey, where's this resource, to, hey, I need equipment. Can you help me out with your resources to order some equipment? We can do all of that. We love journeying with you. We promise that we won't ditch you at the curb once you get the class going. We want to work with you to see it thrive and to see where the students can take the movement within your school. And so once you've done that, develop a plan. Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to research? How do I get this done on a practical level in order to best set myself up for next year? And so that's Unified PE as a whole. Our goal of this course is the course itself, but it's also what happens when these students graduate from the course, or they graduate from high school or middle school or whatever. When they go into their communities, when they go into college, when they choose career paths, we're working with the next doctors, the next lawyers, the next healthcare providers, the next landlords, the next employers. And if they bring this inclusive mindset that you have provided in Unified PE to those different systems, that's a game changer for the disability world. And I mentioned those stats before. Our goal is for students to expect inclusion everywhere where they go. And so this course can help aid in that mindset. Today's classrooms are tomorrow's communities. And if we're not fostering inclusion in the classroom or within your school, we can't expect an inclusive community. And so by implementing a Unified PE course into your course catalog, the ripple effect will be endless, and you will change many students' lives and perhaps even your own life. We have many educators that we work with, so we can connect the dots with similar sized schools, different locations. We're all throughout the state, and so we'd love to work with you of what that looks like. So this is my contact information if you're interested in reaching out. I can connect you with the right person in our office, or it might be me as we work through your inclusion journey together. I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes if you have any questions in the live chat. But if you don't and you're listening to this later, please reach out. We would love to be there for you, even just to share best practices, even to share where you think your school is at and how to get more unified. So thank you for listening. Really greatly appreciate your time and have a great rest of the day.